Okay.
All right. Okay, thank you, Z. All right, so this is where we are. Um, if you'd like to follow along with this slide deck or just to have it for safekeeping, that is the link. So we're going to, of course, just hand this over to you, but if you'd like to open it up in your own tab, you're more than welcome to do that. All right, next slide, Z, thanks. So yeah, so today's purpose, after Mr. Greenidge got in touch with us after an open data class during Open Data Week, um, the uh, the idea was to impart some of that information that we delivered to the general public, specifically for you. And we're going to show you some very useful tools, specifically around three major themes that Mr. Greenidge requested, which is demographic information, um, traffic information, and 311 data, as well as uh, BOARDSTAT and the open data platform. So we're going to show you these tools. Some of you may have seen them before, but hopefully today will help you sort of digest them a bit better. In my own experience, there's so many of these tools out there, and sometimes it's just hard to know where to start. And so this is meant to help break down that barrier a bit. Next slide, thanks. So thank you, Queens Community Board 12, for asking us to do this. And then most of our work has been in partnership with the Office of the Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer, as well as the Mayor's Office of Data Analytics, NYC Community Boards, City Council, and the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation. Next. So we're going to just have some brief welcome and introductions. We're going to keep it super short. Oh, whoops. And then looks like I forgot to update this slide. But we're going to go through the tools that we just mentioned, and then end up with talking about BOARDSTAT and the open data platform. So this is me. I direct the Civic Innovation Fellowship Program at Beta NYC, which is a program that employs CUNY students to work with us in like a work study fashion over the course of the academic year. And we often have many students from Queens College and from LaGuardia. Yeah, we have been running this program for about 6 years, and yeah, that's me. And I'm joined by Zihi, who has been working with Beta MSC for a few years now. He does a lot of the really great technical stuff, as well as many other things. Next slide. And Avi wasn't able to join us tonight. They're a Civic Innovation Fellow currently, but Vansh is here. And Vansh is also a Civic Innovation Fellow and a CUNY student right now at LaGuardia, right? Right, Vansh? Yeah, okay, great. Queens in the house. Okay, cool. Next slide. All right, and then just a little bit about Beta NYC. Mr. Greenidge was asking before, so I'll just circle back really quick. I'm going to go through this fast about this organization. So we are a civic organization dedicated to improving the lives of New Yorkers through civic engagement, open data, technology, and design. We've got a lot of resources on our website to check out. We actually began as just a small group of individuals coming together in 2008. That was before I joined, but talking through how open data and technology could be used to strengthen communities throughout the city. And that has really grown since then. Agveni is asking about the work study program. Is it available at York College? Is York a CUNY school?
Yes.
So the last I understood, it's part of York is not part of this program at CUNY called the CUNY Service Corps. Unfortunately, there's only 5 colleges that are part of this CUNY Service Corps. Thank you, Z. It would be Queens College, John Jay College, New York City Tech, LaGuardia, and Hostos. But who knows, maybe York could become part of that at some point. Is that okay for right now?
Yeah, that's fine
All
for
right.
right now. Hmm.
Okay, great. Okay, so next slide. So Beta MRC is at a long and sort of twisting journey, but as I said, we began as a meetup in 2008, and we've been developing a lot of work around all of these themes over the years, and we are currently moving forward with our Civic Innovation Fellowship Program, our Data Assistance Request Program, which is RADAR, and lots of other civic partnerships and collaborations. And our work really falls into three buckets. We have this talent and career pipeline that starts with our Civic Innovation Fellows. And then we conduct a lot of research and develop tools around them to meet the needs of the people who request that. And then we host events and classes and engagement like this to build a community around these themes. And a lot of our work centers on, and certainly a lot of this work today, centers on passage of the open data law. So that was legislation introduced in City Council in 2010 by the Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer when she was chair of the Technology Committee. And then it was passed 2 years later into the law, and it has undergone a series of amendments to strengthen the law and make it really a model for municipalities around the country, if not world, really. And what this law does is it requires all government agencies to post their public data onto a central portal, the open data platform, which we'll be showing you later, that is, relatively user-friendly, accessible, where the data is all it's relatively standardized, things like that. So it puts all this data, instead of in hundreds of different locations on the web, it asks them to be on this centralized platform, to make it a lot, to expedite the process of gaining access to city data. So that's what the law does. Next slide. Thank you. So as of today, there are more than 3,000 data sets that have been uploaded to the open data platform. It goes through a series of reviews to make sure that that it does meet those standards. It's not, there's in every agency, there's an individual or more called the Open Data Coordinator that helps take the data from the agency and get it onto the platform. But it's been a very robust process over the last 10 years. And New York City definitely has a lot of great information on demographics, 311 schools, businesses, parks, housing, evictions, and much, much, much more, all on this open data platform. Yeah, it's run by the Mayor's Office of Data Analytics and Do It. All right, so with that, that's enough with this intro remarks. And we're gonna talk a bit about finding demographic data and some tools that will make that easier for you, whether you're using it in a report or for your district needs statement, or even your own work. So those tools that we're going to look at today primarily are New York City Population Fact Finder and the Community District Profiles. You may know about these tools, but I'm going to just show them anyway, just in case. And one thing to note is that these two tools were built by the New York City Planning Department. So New York City Planning Department has about 5 years ago started a new sort of offshoot, or a new little department within itself called Planning Labs, and their main purpose is to make data available and available and usable to the public. So New York City Planning Labs has designed these two tools. So we'll start with New York City Population Fact Finder. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We'll start with the Community District Profile. So who here in this audience has ever looked at this before? Can I get some hands maybe raised, or in the chat? Okay, great. So maybe not. So
Excuse me, as district manager, I have.
you have, okay, Yvonne, you have, Ms. Reddick. Okay, great. How do you use it?
Well, I think you know, our former mayor, Bloomberg, I would say, he started the 311, as you know, and now city planning, our district needs statement, they more or less like, which was surprising, they came on board with us when we do the district needs statement. But somewhere, somehow this year, something went wrong.
Okay.
So we're looking forward to see how it's going to be corrected.
Okay, okay, all right, that's good to know. Well, a lot of things went wrong last year. Maybe that had something to do with it. But okay, so all right, so Yvonne has looked at this before. But what this is a site that has a profile page for every single community district across the city. And it uses the most up-to-date census data that's available. Well, almost to give an overview of the district in terms of its demographic data. So there's a lot, many more, as you can see here at the bottom here, indicators. There's many more indicators below this screenshot that different variables about income, poverty, percentage of land in parks, things like that. So this this tool can be found with just a Google search of, oh yeah, I think Z put it in the chat, but it's just called Community District Profiles page. And you go into the map and click Queens 12 and you'll get lots of up-to-date information. Michelle?
Oh, yes. This is similar to what the MTA and the controller's office have. It's about the neighborhood breakdown of the geographics, the ethnic groups, the work. Did you see that one?
The one from who published that one?
The controller's office, Stringer's office. He
City
had
plan,
controller's office. Because he came to my when I was chair of the transportation. He came with the booklets about that breakdown in 2016.
Okay.
And it's similar to that. Okay, so you never saw that one. All right. I just wanted to, it seems like it's very similar to that one.
Okay.
Yep.
city planning has it also.
All right, I'm sorry to cut in. Continue, please.
Okay, no problem. All right, so yeah, and this is also where you can find the latest community district needs statements in case you needed it. They're all attached to this page here. So yeah, so that's the community district profiles page. It does sound like there's some other similar things out there. Okay, so let's move on. Thank you. The next tool is New York City Population Fact Finder. And so this gets into more detail about the demographics in your community district. You can see here on the left that I've selected your district, and it says one Puma. Yeah, so yeah, thanks, Steve. So this is these are actually the boundaries of what's called a Puma, which is a public oh gosh, public something micro, oh my God, what is it? Public something micro, public user micro data something. Anyway, a Puma is a division of the census, and they closely approximate community district boundaries. And so that's why you're seeing this coded as 41112. This is its identifier as a Puma. So this is a census geography at the moment. So So what we're going to do here is we're going to go into the next page. We're going to click this, and then it's going to give us a lot more information, again, about this this Puma. So you're going to have at the top here, you'll see demographic ACS, social ACS, economic ACS, and housing ACS. So that's data that comes from the American Community Survey. That data is updated every single year. The best, the most accurate information comes from the 2014 to 2018 data. So that's what you're seeing here at this point. There is more up-to-date information, but this is still considered sort of better. And the planning department continues to update this as they get more updated data. So this is where you're going to get a whole breakdown of anything related to demographics, age and sex, race and Hispanic origin, Hispanic subgroup, and Asian subgroup. So, and this will be the most up-to-date data that's really kind of available at the moment. So that's what you're going to find in the demographic tab. As you move to the right, you'll get to the social, and so we'll go to the next slide. The social American Community Survey will give you information about all kinds of other things broken down to your Puma or your community district for, you know, things like school enrollment, veteran status, place of birth, citizen, year of entry, language spoken at home. Those are the social variables that are here. As we move forward, next slide, to the economics, we get information on employment status, occupation, class of worker, income and benefits, and income in the past 12 months below the poverty level. So this is all the information that's going to be neatly tied to your Puma. And then same with housing, we'll move forward. For the housing information, you're going to get all of these information: housing occupancy, units and structure, the year the structure was built, housing tenure, so that's going to be whether they're renting or owning, and more. So this is information about your Puma. But as we move forward, next slide, you can also look at this information broken down at the neighborhood level. So your district is a large one. It's one of the largest districts in the city, I think. And so you've got 7 smaller neighborhoods within your community district. You can look at any one of those individually as well, and then just click the view profile and get to that same information that's now cut specifically to your neighborhood boundaries. And if you wanted to go further, you can also look at specific census tracts. So as you see here on the top left, we've now selected census tract. So at that point, if there were a particular part of the district that you wanted information on, you can click that and get to all that same variables. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so that takes us through what the New York City Population Fact Finder is. You can also, if you needed more data, more variables for any reason, you can do that by going to the census site directly to, you know, what do they say, the horse's mouth or something like that. And if you needed something specific, you can, that's the kind of thing you could request of Beta NYC through our radar system. So yeah, so that's basically all I have for you today about census data, but just really wanted you to make sure that you knew where to go for the most up-to-date information that's tailored to your community board. So we started with the community district profile page, and then went into New York City Population Fact Finder, which enables you to get much more granular. Yeah, so I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues and actually have to leave for now. But please be in touch, and you know, we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Emily.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Emily. Enjoy class. All right, so I'm going to be talking about traffic data. So specifically for traffic data, finding vehicle or pedestrian traffic is typically hard to get since it's usually either paid or you have to kind of request it from companies that collect like mobile locations or have like physical sensors or trackers on the roads. However, there are two main sources you can kind of get it. I'm pretty sure all of you are familiar with Google Maps. There's a couple of settings in Google Maps that allows you to look at traffic by time of day and day of week. And also there is this larger kind of a larger state data set that you can kind of use, but it's purely estimates. So it's not that accurate, but it's the best we have for open data and an open data set. So what I'm showing you right now is it's a traffic data viewer that that the state provides. They provide this count called annual average daily traffic, which for this example, I'm on Archer Avenue, and if in this really small print, actually, let me just use a laser pointer, but this really small print shows you that the average, the annual average daily traffic on both sides of that street is about 14,000 vehicles. So that's a ton. And that kind of gives you like a really like a large like overview about what's going on in the street. But if you go on and scroll down on that page, there's actually more detailed information about the morning peak, the afternoon peak, and the evening peak traffic volumes. So you can also see that. So in this case, on Jamaica Avenue, right by Rufus King Park, there is a morning peak of about 833 vehicles. However, this road is designed for only 755 vehicles. So this means that occasionally in the mornings, there is always congestion. And then following the afternoon and evening peaks, there is also slight congestion because the road is not designed for that. So these are some really interesting statistics you can look at. However, again, these are kind of estimates for these roads. There's also another specific layer in this data set. So if you go to the left side of the right top side of this tool and click on the layer icon, you can toggle for something called traffic monitoring. And this will give you short counts for specific sections of the street. So in this case, I selected this specific sensor, I think right across from the courthouse. And you can see how hourly by hour, what is the average weekday volume on that section of the street. So that's pretty granular data you can kind of use to kind of measure like how many cars are going through that area.
See how far back does this data gets tracked? So we're looking at this particular data. Is this like months, years, or this year, or?
This is an annual aggregate of, I think the latest data I have is 2019. But I think for specific sensors, they might have it back to 2017 on the website. I can get you specifics if you want to look into more detail. I know there's a person on the transportation committee, so they might be kind of interested at this.
Yeah, I'm sure they would be. Okay. Thank you.
And then there's also another layer called percent truck. So you can see the percentage of how much of the volume of traffic comes from trucks. So you can see that there's certainly main roads throughout Jamaica, the downtown Jamaica area where there's a lot of truck traffic that is compared to like the highways around Jamaica. So this might be kind of useful to look at to see there's a lot of roadway deterioration or also like just trucks taking like roads they're not supposed to be taking. There's also really interesting DOT data sets that have truck routes. So you might want to also look into that. And lastly, in Google, as you all may know, there is this live traffic data, but if you actually if you go to the panel on the bottom of your screen, you can toggle to typical traffic. And from there, you can kind of switch over by time of day or again, day of week. So if you want to look at Monday at like 12 a.m., you can kind of see like the shifts in traffic throughout the day if you play around with the typical traffic tool. Any questions about this?
I have a question.
Yep.
The truck traffic,
Mm-hmm.
number one, and you mentioned about the roads being designed. The roadway definitely not designed because as the community grows, which there's such an increase in population, you have more traffic. Uh, you talk about the courthouse. The courthouse have not always been at that location. What you were talking about the family courthouse on Jamaica Avenue, right?
Yep. Yeah, I'm not particularly sure. I think it's
You have the
oops.
family
Go ahead.
courthouse on
Yeah,
Jamaica
that's a family
Avenue,
courthouse. Yeah.
which the family courthouse have not always been there at that location. So with the community growing and with all the businesses, the increase in businesses, of course you're going to get more traffic, truck traffic, vehicles traffic, all of that. And it depends on and just when this data that was set up. When you talk about the truck route, you can get the truck routes from DOT. And when you talk about the population, the traffic over at Archer Avenue, yes, you have additional traffic on Archer Avenue because the subway have not always been there. And I continue to say the community is growing, the population, you got the businesses, increase in businesses downtown Jamaica. So there's an increase in everything, unless you're going to do a yearly update report.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I'm pretty sure the state.
I would like to say something else too, because a lot of this information, you know, you can get it from city planning. I'm not talking about the truck traffic and all of that, but the population, the poverty level, the
Yep, definitely. I just want to keep moving on, but definitely you can get the data from city planning. But from this presentation, we want to show you the tools, so you don't necessarily have to communicate with city planning. Yeah, all the time because they might not be responsive. Yep. All right, so I'm just gonna keep this moving, and I'm gonna pass this over to Vanch. Vanch is gonna be talking. Oh,
can I ask you something before you
Yep.
move on? When you said that the traffic is sometimes congested and the traffic is not made for the roads, because like she said, we know they're building apartment buildings over there.
Yes.
What are some suggestions that you would give, and what do you mean by is not made for the roads? Like what's going to happen to the roads?
So
the roads are old.
Yeah, so going back to this slide, the New York State DOT provides this metric called the design hourly volume, and that's what they use to kind of measure like how much the road kind of allow, how many vehicles the road allows in that certain hour. And currently in morning peaks, so the morning rush hour, there are too many cars on the road, and that kind of cause a failure in the movement and congestion. So this is just state DOT metrics, but of course, if you have eyes, you can definitely just go outside and look at there being traffic or there being new development projects. And I think having data to back that point up is important, but also just talking about this all the time is important.
Let me just jump in for a second, Lynette.
Yep.
You know that we were looking at the land use issue where they're looking to put in the new curve cut on Archer Avenue. So we could use this particular tool to identify what
Yes.
is the standard traffic, what is the times when the traffic is congested, as well as our site visits. So we could use this data to let them know what we would like them to do, as opposed to just eyeballing it and saying,
Right.
yeah, yeah, it is congested, but here's how we can actually prove the data and say, look, this is above the red line, and these are the times, and if we're going to allow you to do this, then this is the window with the less congestion that we would ask you, so we could put in some requirements
Right. It's
into
above the line before they even get the
right.
people in
Yes,
there.
definitely.
So
So yeah,
Exactly.
this is just to back up your points. Yeah. So actually, Vanch is going to show you a really useful tool called BoardStat that will help you pull out all the community output from 3-in-1, and then kind of visualize it and figure out where is the most complaints in the area. So Vanch, go ahead.
All right, thanks, Z. So I'm sure, of course, all of you know about the 311. And if you guys don't know about it, it's a service by the government of NYC. It provides its residents with a resource for assistance and general information that relates to the quality of life matters. Also, it is available 24 hours a day, 365 days. It's available in 175 languages with 172 agencies, and it offers services which are over 3,600. So on the next slide, so the BOARDSTAT is a tool which is developed by Beta NYC, which actually is built around 311 dataset, and it's built for community boards and with community boards. So on the next slide, so to say, put it in simple words, BOARDSTAT is actually a dashboard, a multi-page dashboard that will allow you to visualize the data set, particularly 311 data set, into graphs and charts, and will actually help you to form questions and hopefully find some answers to it. So the next slide. So here's how you get to it. The link is boardstat.beta.nyc. You can just press it up and press enter, and it will take you to this landing page. Now here we have on the top right all the boroughs. And for this presentation, we of course going to focus on the Queens. So we can select Queens and press enter. And on the next slide, yeah. So when you select your borough, it will first direct you to this first page of BOARDSTAT. And on the left-hand side, you can see the purple tabs have all the pages here. In total, we have 8 pages. And so this is the first page. And this is purely for setting up filters on community board, complaint type, agency, date range, and so on. Basically, the entire 311 data set is very huge and have over 25 million rows. So it's obviously good to narrow it down to your specific community board and borough. So on the next slide, you can just click on community board and select whatever community board you want. For today's presentation, of course, it's going to be CB12. And if you move to the next one, yeah. So this is the second page of BOARDSTAT. And here you can see, you can again put some filters. You can change it over here if you want. You can select the date range. In this screenshot, you can see the date range is from 2010 to 2021, which means it's showing all the 311 complaints made in your community board within the past 10 years. So first, on the left section, we have a column chart that shows you the top 10 311 requests and its complaint types. Oh, thanks, Lee. And on bottom, here there's a table. The same information is represented in a tabular form where you can see the complaint type, its descriptor, and its count of requests. So on the right, there's a different table that shows you the count of requests based on your addresses. And on top of that, there's the map section where you can navigate those addresses. So on the next slide.
Excuse me, how often is this updated? Is this a daily, weekly?
Yeah, it's updated every 24 hours, nightly.
24 hours. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So no problem. So you can see, for example, here, there are 2 addresses that are highlighted, which have the most number of complaints within the past 10 years in CB12. And we can take a look about these addresses by moving on to the next page. Here you can So here you can look up an address and its entire, I'm sorry, its entire history of 311 requests by just entering the address in the search bar. And you can select the date range. Again, the date range here is for the past 10 years. And you can see the results here. We have like a tree map where all these colored boxes and so these are the top 10 complaint types, and each color is representing a different complaint type. And also the size of the complaints, the bigger the box, the more the number of complaints. So that's something you should keep in mind. And on the right-hand side, we have a line chart. And this line chart helps you break down the trend of these complaint types over the past 10 years. You can see the volume of requests, how is it going, increasing or decreasing from 2010 to 2021. And on the table at the bottom, again, we have the same information, just in tabular format. So on the next slide, you can see that, yep. So you can move on. Yep. So here, another thing to keep in mind is that BOARDSTAT is highly interactive. So you can click around a bunch of objects here, and it will just highlight those and fade away the rest. Basically, it means it's filtering that again to your specific choices. For example, if you just click on the heat and hot water complaints, it's highlighted here, and you'll notice that the table below it, it now only displays the heat and hot water complaints for that address. And also the line chart is also filtered down to just heat and water complaints. So on the next slide, yeah, there's just an example of how you can observe how the trend is going on. For example, in 2014, we have heat and water complaints for the descriptor of apartment only, which are 7 complaints, and 54 for entire building. And on the next slide, you can see for 2016, it was like a peak complaint year for heat and water complaints for this address. And then it started to go down, and it was still going down in year 2020. So if you want to explore, for example, what's going on for the year 2020, you can take a look at it from a geographic point of view. For that, you have to move on to the next page. Here, you can see that there's a map section. But first of all, on the left side, there's again a bunch of filters that you can put on. And on the right side, there's a map section with a bunch of circles on it. So basically, each circle is representing a particular address associated with some sort of complaint. And different colors, again, represent different complaint types. So on the next slide, you'll notice that there's a cluster here in the neighborhood of Jamaica, covering 88th Avenue and from 169th Street to somewhere to 150th Street. So because I'm around this neighborhood, so I know that this neighborhood has, and specifically this area has a lot of apartment buildings. And so that's something you can keep in mind, that if a cluster is there, there can be problematic side of issues. And I know from experience that this area has a lot of apartments, so it must be related to that. Now, if you move on to the next slide, you can hover over to a circle. Since this was the biggest circle that I see on the screen, it means that it has a lot of complaints. So if you hover over it, you can see the data. You can see the complaint type as heat and hot water. Also, you can go next. You can see the count of complaints is 484. And just keep in mind that these complaints were made not from the year 2010, but from the year 2020. So 484 heat and water complaints were made just from past year. And you can also cross-check the incident address. It's 88th Avenue, 22nd Parsons. So it's around that neighborhood. So this was just an example of how you can put a bunch of filters, change the date ranges, complaint type, and see what's going on in a particular neighborhood. So if you can go to the next slide, you can see this is the next page. And here you can see the average closing time for ticket for every agency. And again, this is highly interactive. So on the next slide, you can see if you just select NYPPD, it shows the average closing time to be 0.14, which is like less than half a day. So if you go to the next slide, yeah, here you see you can actually pick one complaint type, for example, noise commercial, and compare it with different years. So here in this screenshot, we're comparing it for the year 2019 and 2020. The red bars here are representing the year 2019 and the green 2020. And also, if you notice that the red bars are kind of consistent over the year, except for the months May and June, because May and June are like the summer season, people are out and not at home, so they naturally experience more commercial issues, noise commercial issues. But the year 2019, you see a certain decline after the month of February and March to May. And that could be explained because of the fact that in those months, the first lockdown happened and everything got shut down. So people were staying at their home and were experiencing lesser noise commercial complaints. And there's a peak at in the year 2020 represented by the green bar in the month of July. Yeah, so that's because phase 3 and 4 reopened in that month and everybody just came back outside and they were like going out. So having a lot more noise commercial complaints. So now if we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is the last page of BOARDSTAT. And here is kind of a reverse visualization. I'm sorry, I thought you had a question. Okay, so in the previous slide, we saw that you can compare one complaint type with different years, but here you can select multiple complaint types and compare it over a single year. For example, here we are doing the non-compliance with phase reopening, and non-emergency complaints are compared. We are comparing these two complaint types over the year of 2020. Yeah, so that was all about BOARDSTAT. And now I'm gonna pause here for a couple of minutes to see if anyone has any questions.
Wow, a lot of data.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it just takes a.
I have a question.
Yep.
My question is, you mentioned heat and hot water, and when in the year. The total of heat and hot water. Did you get your stats from 311?
Yeah. For the BOARDSTAT, whatever information it shows, it's based on the 311 data set.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in general, BOARDSTAT kind of allows you to kind of analyze that huge 311 data set. So all the visualizations that Manch went over essentially goes through like if you want to view like a certain location, if you want to view by a certain year or a certain kind of agency, you can do that with BOARDSTAT.
But in other words, your stats comes from, instead of going agents by agency, you get, not you per se, but they come from 311.
Yep, this data set, this tool streams data directly from 311.
Okay, thank you.
You know, the nice thing about it also just highlights just Community Board 12's data as opposed to everybody else's data, so we can really take a look at specific issues that we are having. I should have asked you guys about to zoom in on garbage or you know and what have you, because we've got some issues in that. But again, this tool would allow us to go back in and look at complaints related to garbage, trees. You know, if there was a damaged tree or whatever, we could actually track some of that information as well. Any other questions for these gentlemen?
But I think what we enter and also what the calls that goes through to 311, that's how we track it.
Yes, yeah, you can definitely track each of the complaints throughout its life
Right.
cycle, so you can see if they're answered or not. We have worked with Manhattan Community Board 12 actually on a ton of noise-related complaints, and sometimes, and yeah, it's been kind of really useful for them to kind of go through like how many complaints are happening each month and such.
Now, just so these agencies have access to all this data as well, I would assume, and they look at it. They have their own filters that they look at it as well.
Yeah, I think so. The process of how 311 works is that the 311 call center will forward the complaints to each agency, and it's up to the individual agencies to deal with however, or like kind of answer those requests however they like it, and then it's up to them to kind of update those individual responses. So yeah, they have their own portal. They don't specifically use BOARDSTAT.
Okay. Okay. I see. Great.
Question.
But the city agencies respond to where, if there's an issue, say for instance, flooding conditions, where they get the most complaints, that's where they respond first.
I think it would be up to the individual agency, but yeah, I think
Right, I'm saying the
Yeah.
agency.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's up to the individual agency to either respond to the latest or respond to the most. So sorry, there was another question.
More or less how many complaints they
Yeah.
get.
Charlene, did you have a question?
Yes, I had a question, Charlene. I had a
Charlene.
question about in terms of the complaint. How is the complaint type figured out? Is that something that they figure out based on what the caller says, or is that something that's pre-populated by BOARDSTAT?
It's up to what either yeah, it's up to if the complainer kind of or the resident, I don't like saying complaints, but because there aren't complaints, they're legitimate reasons to call. But yeah, it really depends on how the 311 call center or 311 app classifies it, and then we kind of use that information from their data set to organize it.
Great. Any other questions?
Good information.
Right. Okay, if no more questions, I'm gonna head over to the next slide.
Well, Vanch, I'll take this over because yeah, we only have like 4 minutes. So yeah, I'm just gonna show key slides of this because I want to kind of introduce you to the open data platform, which hosts a ton of different data sets. So I'm gonna skip a few slides right here, but essentially the open data platform allows you to kind of search through the large amount of data sets. I think what Vanch set up here was a data set called Legally Operating Businesses, which is what the Department of, I think, Consumer Affairs has, because yeah, this is what the Department of Consumer releases, and this data set is about businesses that have to register for licenses in a certain community board or a certain area. So you can kind of use this data set to get a good view of businesses are currently, or what current business in your neighborhood have licenses for certain types of stuff. Sorry, my internet might be cutting off. Launch, is my internet all right?
Yeah, it's good.
All right, it just said my internet was unstable, but yeah, we're going to be exploring the legally operating businesses. So if you go into this data set, you can see it's updated weekly. So it's a fairly fresh data set. Each week you can kind of view new information and kind of see the health of your neighborhoods. So if we go into this data set here, we can see that this data set has over 267,000 rows. And it has information about the industry, when this license was created, and business name, and then I think also a type of license. So if we go through the more advanced tools of the open data platform, we can kind of filter down this data so we can find out more information specific to your area. So if you go to the top right, click filter, add a filter, you can filter it to a certain community board. So in this case, we're filtering down to Queens Community Board 12. this community board here. And from there, we can see that there is 4,586 businesses that are currently licensed with the Department of Consumer Affairs. And then there's a more advanced tool called Rollup, where you can kind of tell the open data platform to help you count how many of a certain type of business or how many licenses are being active under a certain business name or something like that. So let's go to the Rollup, and then we can add an industry. We can tell it's grouping by industry, and then we can count it by a unique number. And from there, once we click apply, we can see that the most licensed business in Queens CB12 is tobacco retailer, followed by home improvement contractor, and then secondhand dealer general, and then et cetera, et cetera. But you can kind of see how powerful the open data the platform is to kind of quickly get a data set and then kind of break it down to your district. And then from there, you can get some really general summary of your area. I think that's all the time we have, but if you have any specific extra questions, we can definitely talk about that.
Can you just go back to the filter slide really quickly and then just advance?
Yep, so sorry, we kind of went through this really quickly because yeah, it was just,
Okay.
yeah, we were
Okay,
kind
you
of out
can
of
go
time.
for it.
Yep, are you following along with us?
Yeah, I'm following along.
Okay, so sorry for going too quick, but yeah, if you need additional help, you can email us and we can help you out. So next slide is above in the same panel of filters. If you click sort and roll up, you can then roll up by a certain field.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Awesome, great. And you end up with this data set, hopefully. Awesome. Are there any additional questions?
Looks like we're good. This is a powerful tool. If I'm looking to start a business in the Community Board 12, I can look at this and determine what my how much competition I have now can you also locate the businesses in terms of the business addresses and all that as well?
Yeah, so when you do roll up, you kind of summarize the data by a certain field. But if you go back to the raw data set, when we filtered by Queens Community Board 12,
Yeah.
there's additional columns in this data, like a phone number, but also there's an entire address field that you can kind of put on a map and view where these kind of businesses are operating. So like I think a really useful thing that I think like for my school projects was looking at where all the tobacco retailers were or businesses with tobacco retail licenses, and then trying to figure out like how to get them away from schools or something like that. So yeah, there's a ton of like useful data sets that you can apply to your board.
Excellent. Excellent. If there are any other questions, because these gentlemen have to go, thank you. Just want to really thank you for laying it out. I'm sure that we'll have some additional questions after we get to digest some of this information. It again is very useful, very powerful information, and certainly something that's available. So why not utilize it? Um, Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Yep, and yeah, again, we can definitely like have a presentation, and we can really deeply dive through all the processes that you might go through. Yeah, this was just a really brief introduction to all the various tools out there. Yeah, and hopefully it wasn't very overwhelming. If you have any questions, you might email in the chat actually. You
Okay.
can ask me directly, but I'm pretty sure you have Emily's email already.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good night.
Appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night. So the
Good night.
rest of the community board, we can stay on. Just got a couple of interesting things. I think we can utilize some of this data going forward. Certainly for land use, for traffic, um, sanitation. We might be able to get some data with. So I mean, there sounds like it's oodles of data out there. We just need to figure out how to access that information and that data. So you know, really, I'm really excited about having access to these tools. Um, any other questions before we close it down for the night? Just wanted to make an announcement. I gave this information to Miss Reddick. There's a new hotel that just opened up on 97th Avenue. I believe the address is 147-16 97th Avenue, and it is open for business. I don't think they notified the community board, but just wanted to let you know that as we do in most economic developments, we kind of keep track of what is opening up and what's new. So just wanted to give you that information as well. If there are no further questions or comments, anything?
We,
Very good.
Glenn, hey, we're
Yes.
definitely going to be using, we need to use this beta data personally and in office. I definitely want to start using it, looking at, like you said, sanitation, as well as liquor licenses. Who's asking for them?
Yes.
And also looking at how much 911 activity is in reference to the places that are asking for liquor license. So we'll be using that, and I'll be talking to Ms. Reddick tomorrow about that.
Okay. All right.
Good.
Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for spending your time. I hope it was valuable and useful.
Absolutely. Great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. Have a blessed day.
Thank you.
And a blessed week. Good night.
You
You
God
too.
bless.
Bye
Good
bye.
night.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.